right. Welcome to The Porch, a podcast filmed and scripted by our wonderful Umoja Narco College students. We just want to invite you to pull a seat to the porch, grab your coffee, tea, sparkling water, or whatever, and just come by with us. This podcast was made possible through the RCCD Foundation as well as the Century Circle Grants and ANCC. With that being said, enjoy.
Good morning. I hope you guys are all good. My name is Jacob. I'm an accounting student. I hope to transfer out in the fall next year. And how do you, Romy?
My name is Romy. I am a communications major. I am finishing up my first year, and I hope to transfer next year as well.
My name is Maya. I'm a first year doing general education.
Okay. Now that you know everybody, I would like to tell you that we are going to be discussing Amiri Baraka, his poems. We're going to be discussing the notes of speech, the Kaaba, and the Black God. And technically what we're trying to prove here today is that all of these have a general sequence. He's writing in a certain way. He's trying to each of his poems are not what they say in the Purdue Owl, they're not all formalism, that each one has a series. So it all has a following into each other. And the general theme throughout all his poems is that it's grief that he's trying to it's black grief that he's trying to convey to his listeners. Yeah.
Okay. Amiri Baraka was born October 7th, 1934, and he lived till 79 years old. He was known to be a playwright, a poet, and a writer in general for books. He earned the name of Architect of Black Art, and he started his time writing while he was in the Air Force.
What influenced his writing was simply because he believed that he was in somewhat of a white cocoon of privilege. Even though he lived during the 1930s when racism was at an all-time high, he still felt as if he had some privilege in terms of how he was able to do things or his writing or the gifts he had bestowed upon him. So he decided to use his writing to actually talk about what's going on in the black community and outside of the black community.
Yes. And then the poem that I'll be reading today is The Notes of Speech. And I'll be introducing that one. I would like to say it. African blues does not know me, their steps in sands of their own land. A country in black and white, newspapers blown down, pavements of the world, does not feel what I am, strength. In the dream, in the oblique stuckling of nerve, the wind throws up sand, eyes of something locked in, hate, of hate, of hate. I walk abroad. They conduct their deaths apart from my own. Those heads I call my people. And who are they? People to concern? Myself, an ugly man, who you to concern the white flat stomachs of maidens inside houses, dying black-peeled moon. Light my fingers, move under her clothes. Where is her husband? Black words throw up sand to her eyes, fingers of their private dead. Those souls' eyes in sand, my color is not theirs, lighter white man. Talk, they shy away, my own death. Dead souls, my so-called people, Africa, a foreign place. You are as any other sad man here, American.
So what were your guys' thoughts about that?
So, I know I'm going to contradict myself, but in this poem specifically, I think it actually does follow the formalism and it does express a lot of pain in it, but I think it's more or less of him coming against white people and white supremacy in this poem itself. And there is pain, but most of his pain is not about what's really happening at the time, but more or less the pain that he doesn't know who he is. I mean, if we look at the first line 1, African blues does not know me, their steps in sands of their own land, a country in black and white, So without, let's remove the part where it says country in black and white, and we just look at lines 1 to 4. That kind of, for me, speaks to a man who lost something. He's angry at the fact that he doesn't know something that he needs to know. And that's a huge step. And that's why I'm saying it's more or less of a formalism. And it's formalism because if you look at, after Romy has done her poem, is that each of these poems kind of have a different following. And he's discussing something that's going on that he has experienced in that specific time or that specific year. So
are you saying you mainly think it's about his pain of not knowing who he is?
yes, and also the pain of how, if you look at lines,
I kind of took it as also the pain of like being in America, like a country in black and white, talking about like the segregation, because during the time that this was written, it was like, I think it was pre-Civil War or right when it was happening. It was like early 1960s. But yeah, a strength and a dream that also makes me believe like he was dreaming about what America could be for black men.
yeah, that is
Yeah.
true. But historically speaking, he kind of started becoming an active poet after Malcolm X was killed. So that was after the Civil Acts was kind of written out. It was now in the Black Revolution. And this is kind of the times where the Black Panther was kind of being developed. So what we could say is that this is how he kind of saw that what Martin Luther King didn't really help the black community at all. This was him becoming a full-on Marxism, that he was not trying to, in some sort of way, because I see this poem, especially this poem, as a protest art. That he's now protesting and attacking the white people directly through his poems. And towards his poem,
In my opinion, I think he is attacking white people in his poems, honestly.
yes,
I see that, especially in Notes for a Speech, I saw that he's like African bluesers that know me. Like he talks about not how their land. He basically talks about he feels like a stranger in their eyes. Like he knows of it, but he's not from it.
Yeah.
So he talks about the parting grief, that how you talked about what America could have been, but what it really is.
yes.
And he talks about like I basically got from this poem that he was like his life is seen as less compared to other people's. Like his death would be seen as something less compared to other people. I feel like he talks about being with the white woman in this poem,
Yeah, for
because
sure.
we talked about how his wife was his first wife was white.
Was white, Jewish, yeah.
So he talks about how her life would be worth more than his, and he talks about his sadness for Africa and his departing from that part of his life. So that's what I got out of Notes for a Speech.
Yeah, that is true. And if you guys actually look at it, it goes from very sad, depressive to strength. And now he kind of highlights that strength, meaning that now he's kind of left it all. And if you look at the gaps in between, he kind of leaves a huge gap and a second gap. So that kind of references that he's kind of leaving his denial, not his denial, but his pain behind. And now he's kind of stepping into a new age of strength. And that's when he fully comes at the white people. And he's like, in the dream, an oblique suckling of the nerve, the wind throws up sands. Eyes are something locked in. Hate of hate of hate. To walk abroad, they conduct their deaths apart from my own. So from this is kind of what he's trying to say is that white people, in a sense, have... They're so superior in such a way that they don't even care about the communities that black people are always dying from. They conduct their deaths more than they conduct my own. Because in his heart, he has died as a black person. He doesn't know what he is. He doesn't know where he is. And to even reference more, he even changed his name to Amara Bakari. Straight after his name was...
Leroy Jones.
Yes, and that was, I think it was a lot of the influence from the Nation of Islam, is that
Yeah.
once he had this kind of influence, he also kind of saw that he couldn't do anything without him becoming an African first, and that's why he changed his name into that.
Yeah.
And now he's moving towards the strength that he's going into, and now he's starting to see that whatever Martin Luther King did, it was a great thing that he did, but he fell short. you know, and now he has to experience what he's experiencing, that they're conducting their debts apart from his own, that even though Martin Luther King has done all of this, they still don't see black people as people. And they suckling in hate of hate. He repeats the hate of hate because it's almost like he's confused as to why do they still hate us as much as they hate us
Yeah.
when they have seen us as equals now.
He's like
Yeah.
he's like putting emphasis on the hate by saying
Yes.
it repetitively.
I saw the part where he says the wind throws up sand and then goes into eyes. I found that like maybe he was saying that they were blinded and stuff like that. They wouldn't even
Yes.
see that.
Yes, that is true. It's almost like they just like, it's almost like they're blind from seeing the fact that black people are black. It's almost, we can even bring it to context of today, how a lot of people today kind of say, we don't see color.
Yeah.
You know, somebody is throwing sand into their eyes. And it's kind of like they're oblique. And then when something is oblique, it means that it's kind of skew. So they're kind of skewing the idea of certain things, you know, they're probably hiding behind. I kind of saw a reference with that through here. What I wrote down was that it's almost like the rules of racism have changed since the Civil Act.
They've changed, but they're still somewhat the same.
Yes, they're hiding behind it, the obliqueness. It's no more straightforward racism now. It's not anyone calling you the N-word and then somebody blatantly not giving you a job because of your color, somebody attacking you because of your color. Now it has kind of changed. It's kind of shape-shifted into something different. And this something different is them telling you, oh, no, we don't see your color, we like you. And this kind of references like that. And that's what angers him, because now he goes to strength, where he's kind of happy with his life. And then he goes to the second part. And over here, the third part of this, the third stanza of this, he kind of also does the breaking, right? And then he says, who are they? People to concern. Right? It's almost like, who are they to concern themselves with us? You know, like, it's okay because they're so great that they don't want to care about black people because they white, they superior, they just like, okay, we'll give them this and then we just give them the scraps. Who are they to concern us? Because clearly we're not humans to them. And then that's why it goes down. Myself, ugly man. Because this is not him kind of speaking about himself. This is technically what white people would be saying to him, that he's an ugly man because he's black and all of that. Who are you to concern? The white flat stomachs, you know? And now that's when he's now coming directly into it and he's just saying, okay, now he's mocking them the same way they have mocked him. And throughout the whole stanza, he's talking about how white people become peeled moon, light fingers, how weird they are. Excuse me for using the word weird. Let's find a proper word. How unnourished as humans they are, how they don't have the rich colors that we have, you know, and he's just looking down at them the same way they look down at us, how they say we are animal looking, we are uncivilized and all that. He's doing that now, but then towards them, through this point, he's attacking them directly. Their souls shy away, they shy away, my own death, my own dead souls, my so-called people, Africa, you know. And he says my so-called people, I think, personally, because he's saying that now that he's no more an African, right, he's now an American, and the American people are meant to support him the same way how the Africans are meant to support him. Now he's kind of coming out at them as like my so-called people, because the Americans don't have that love that African people would have had for him, you know. And then this whole stanza for me is him kind of coming against him, but it's also him kind of finding a breakthrough within himself of blackness.
Yeah. I was gonna say I found it honestly kind of sad how like he doesn't find himself an African, even though like that is gonna be his original descendant. Like they refer to black men in America as black instead of African, but you don't honestly see that for a lot of other races. It's either Mexican, Asian, like they title African American and they always have to put American in there instead of just African. And I thought that that was interesting, like thinking about that. Like
It was one part I did recognize though when he's like, my soul, my own dead souls, my so-called people, Africa. When I looked up dead souls, they talked about property in a sense. So like he felt like he talks about his loss of property. He feels as if
Yes.
he's lost that part of himself. But when he says Africa's a foreign place, I wonder if he's like also referring to like the black people here. He's just kind of like, I know I'm of it, and we know we're of it, but we're not from it. It's like this is the group we're arranged, and we know we're from there, but we don't really know each other. Like the only reason you're considered my people is because we're all here together, and we all look the same, but
Yeah.
we're not all the same. So I'm wondering if he's kind of like, oh, well, this is what it's supposed to be, but you know, it's not how I feel.
Yeah, and I think it's more because the reason why he feels this way is because the Nation of Islam was such a collective group in such a way they supported each other in so many levels. I know now that in history we kind of see how corrupt the organization was, but like during those times, black people needed an organization like that. You know, whereas Martin Luther King was just an individual. It was never a party. It was never a what can I say? It was never united. It was only his dream. That's why throughout his whole speeches, it's almost like he says, I have a dream, you know, because it's his dream and everyone else was following him. Whereas the Nation of Islam and the Black Panther Party were groups of unity. Everyone there understood what they were doing.
Yeah.
You know, they were all collective and they all knew what the agenda was going on. And that's why he feels this way, because now he's joining this group and you can see how much love and how much unity is actually going into this thing. And he's just like, man, like, maybe this is how Africa is meant to be.
Yeah.
You know, this unity. Whereas if the people who were part of, because I know a lot of the people who were part of the Civil Rights Act and everything kind of moved into the Black Panther Party. And now he's like, you know, that was great and we kind of achieved a lot with that. But then I still didn't know myself. I was still not conscious as a black person. But whereas now he's kind of seeing everything. He's changing his name. He divorced his wife. You know, and I think the reasons I think all those things he lists out there is kind of all the things he hated about his wife, you know, and I think in some sort of way he kind of married her to kind of fill a void, you know, just to make him feel like he needs to be part of some culture that he was never part of to begin with.
Yeah, I found it funny. He honestly talked about Jewish people a lot in his poems, especially black art. And I haven't heard much about like Jewish and black people, so I was confused. And then I found out his first wife was a Jewish woman, and I was like, oh, that's where that came from. But yeah, he did talk about unity a lot, and that was something he wanted. In some of his interviews, he said that was very important for the black community. Like, it's important to have individuality, but it's important to have one common ground to come together on and agree on, so you can form a unity and a group and a community in that sense.
Yeah, that is true, because a lot of it, I think, black people are their own worst enemy. I think we see it a lot today with how the gangs are killing each other. Like, there is no progressiveness. It's kind of like there's only a few black people who want to go forward, like Nipsey Hussle, who want to actually take the communities and kind of grow them. But then there's a million other people who just want to turn back and just destroy and destroy. And it's because of the lack of unity, the lack of purpose of people, what they have. And he probably saw that as well. And that's why I can say that a lot of his poems, when you read them and we fully understand them, we can kind of look back into our society today, and everything is still repeated. Everything's still going on the same way.
And that's where Kaba kind of comes in?
Yes.
Yeah, so you actually hit it right on the spot when you talked about unity in the community. So Kaba starts off, a closed window looks down on a dirty courtyard, and black people call across or scream across or walk across, defying physics in their stream of will. Our world is full of sound. Our world is more lovely than anyone's, though we suffer and kill each other, sometimes fail to walk the air. We are beautiful people, with African imaginations, full of mass and dances and swelling chants with African eyes and noses and arms, though we sprawl in gray chains in a place full of winters. When we want the sun, we have been captured, and we look to labor to make our getaway, into the ancient image, into a new correspondence with ourselves and our black family. We need magic. Now we need the spells to raise up, return, destroy, and create. What will be the sacred word? So what did you guys take out of this?
I think it's a beautiful poem. I mean, look at how he structures the stanzas in between these poems. Whereas if you look at the notes for speech, it was almost, there was no spacing. It was kind of free. They call it free verse. It was lack of punctuation. You kind of wanted everyone to rush through it in a sense. Whereas in this one, it's more structured. There's 5 stanzas, but you could each tell them what, you can kind of tell what each one's going. They're following a certain sequence, and I wonder. But let's see if we can draw out a bit of pain from this one.
I feel like he. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I found it as something like comparing America to imprisonment, and just with like the first stanza and then the fourth stanza, he really talks about like captured and being like, or just like prison. What's the right word?
Captivity.
Like alignments, I guess. Like just words to make you think of prison and imprisonment.
Yeah.
I feel like with this one, he kind of wanted people to take the time to like capture what he's saying.
Yeah.
He talks about like even though the closed down window looks down on a dirty courtyard and black people call across a stream across or walk across, defying physics in their stream of will, in their will. I feel like with that one, he was trying to say despite everything that black people have been through, despite the adversities and the obstacles placed on us as a community, we still continue to defy what is happening and continue to make our way across and do what we have to do for ourselves. He says our world is full of sound, our world is more lovely than anyone's. Throughout history, they have seen, like, even with our hairstyles, the way we dress, where we're built, white society has always tried to put us down or shame us in the way that we are, and try to say, oh, that's not right, or that's ghetto, or that's ratchet, or etc. And for a long time, we had come to that notion, like, as if that's true, but it's not true. So he talks about how beautiful we are. He's acknowledging black art, in terms of, like, our features, how we dress, our style, how we talk, how we present ourselves. So he's acknowledging that. Our noses, that's a big thing too. He talks about mass and dances and swelling chants with African eyes. And he says even though we have all these beautiful things, in Kaba I feel like there's external and internal references of black pain. So the external references might be the white society that has continuously tried to oppress us. And the internal pain comes from within the community itself, as if like we kill each other, we hurt each other. And there's already society out there that's already trying to do it to us. We continue to do it to us, and they feel as if it's okay to continue to do it to us because we do it to ourselves. And he talks about, how beautiful we are, our African imaginations, and kind of what Maya had said about the chains. I felt like he was referring to mental and physical slavery. He was addressing physical slavery, but he was also talking about mental slavery in the society wherein we feel the need to constantly, we're constantly battling things, even with like home ownership or property. It's harder for us as a black society because of how we're looked at.
Yeah, that is true.
And I think he also tries to highlight like the beauty in Africans, like just to let them know like, oh, your home is beautiful, you are beautiful. And like the ends of the third stanza, he says, though we sprawl in gray chains in a place full of winters, what we want is sun. And I think that kind of highlights the comparison between like America and Africa. It's like the more dark season weathers are like, and then like the hot, like.
Yeah, that is true. Like you guys brought up very important points in that, and then, Romy, you say it was more of a black pain, but I see it more of a black appreciation. These are all things that make us beautiful. Everything that he's listing out here, it's almost like, I know under the Black Panther Party they had a black consciousness ideology, and these are some of those teachings that they had going in those parties. And as you could see, it's almost like we are a beautiful people with imaginations, because it's almost like when you're black you couldn't think because the education that we had was inferior. Full of masks and dances and swelling chants, with African eyes and noses and arms, those we swell in grey chains, in a place full of winters, when we want is sun. It's almost like, regardless of our situation that we've been brought here, I think this resembles more of the things that are happening in the East. I think here in California there's a lot of sun, so this is mostly like New York kind of area, but it's kind of.
You did live in New Jersey.
Oh, you did live in New Jersey?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, no, that's kind of. I was like, ever since California is quite hot.
Yeah.
But so it resembles things that are happening on that side. But like, you can kind of see that for him, all he really wanted was to be African, you know, and he really emphasizes that with the chants. These chants are things that are happening in Africa. This is how we celebrate. It's a black culture to always be dancing whenever something is wrong or something is bad. You know, it's celebration. We dance, we chant. You know, it's our thing, and this is what he wants to bring here. That, you know, this. No matter how bad things are, we need to still celebrate the small things that are happening. And that's what I'm saying. This poem itself, it's all about appreciation. It's all about helping black people, consciousizing them, not conscious, teaching them in a sense that, you know, we are beautiful people. Don't look at the media itself. We are beautiful people. We are great human beings. And we're going to go forward together, you know. And that's what I see from this poem.
I actually agree with you. I guess I was looking at it from a more in-depth perspective. He does talk. That's what I like with this one. He really wanted people to actually take their time and capture what he was saying because he wanted to appreciate our beauty. But I was also acknowledging like the external factor, the internal factors of our black pain. But I completely agree with you.
Yeah, I feel like he's highlighting the good and the bad with that one. And I feel like with the whole imprisonment thing, like talking also about like the systems that were put in place in America. Because he describes like his time at Howard University. His quote was, "Howard University shocked me into realizing how sick the Negro could be, how he could be led to self-destruction, and how he would not realize that it was society that had forced him into this sickness." And his time in the Air Force, he said, was racist, degrading, and intellectually paralyzing.
Yes.
So I feel like those times that he spent in school and in the Air Force really shaped the way that he viewed America also.
Yeah, I think a lot of it was for a long time in his life, he was treated black for so long that he even went and married a white female to make sure that he fit in with this whole cultural thing of having a house, picket fence, serve your time in the army like every other white guy did. So and I can see it because in a sense, he kind of married a white lady, and he was trying to fit into the white picket fence type of ideology of how a normal white American family would be, and he kind of did that so he can kind of shy away from the fact that he was black. And only after so long and after going through all the other things he went through, he's finally realizing that he was exactly like that. It was intellectual degrading, that going to a historically black university, even though it was a black university, it was still kind of following the ideologies of white people. So it was just a black university just for inclusivity, but it was technically still indoctrinating.
That makes a lot of sense, yeah. And like I feel like they can relate to some people today, like in our community. I feel as if like a lot of them feel the need to, not necessarily saying it's a bad thing, but they do it for the wrong reasons, because in a sense they feel as if they don't really know themselves or their identity, so they try to look for it within other groups or outside of the community, because they feel as if they don't fill it in with the black community. They don't know who they are,
Yeah, it is a big thing, and that's why it was very important to have the Nation of Islam, the Black Panther Party, because those consciousness teachings that they had within those things are the reasons why we have a great poet like Amiri Bakari, because now he has been through all these things. He's technically gone through all the stages any person can ever go through. They're trying to find yourself, making your bad decisions, and then finally finding your purpose and sticking it out until the end. And he found his purpose. His purpose here in the United States was to liberate black students. And he kind of passed away in 2014, and he kind of lived a purposeful life. He found his purpose throughout everything that he did in his life. And once he found it, he went and he did everything that everyone else was meant to be doing in terms of liberating the black mind. He went and continued doing that in the universities as a professor. And he kind of also did that representing his black art poem that I'll allow you to say. And if you read through that whole poem, it's kind of celebrating black people, liberating black minds and everything. And he expresses all of that throughout that whole poem.
And black art, I feel like he uses art as a weapon against white people. And when I read this poem, I'm going to avoid saying the hard R and just say the N-word. So say so. Okay. Poems are bullshit unless they are teeth or trees or lemons piled on a step or black ladies dying of men leaving nickel hearts, beating them down. Fuck poems, and they are useful. Would they shoot, come at you, love what you are, breathe like wrestlers, or shudder strangely after pissing? We want live words of hip-hop. Ooh, I said that wrong. We want live words of the hip world, live flesh and coursing blood. Heart, brains, souls, splintering fire. We want poems like fists beating N-word out of jocks, or dagger poems in the slimy bellies of the owner. Jews, black poems to smear on girdle mama mulatto bitches, whose brains are red jelly stuck between Elizabeth Taylor's toes. Stinking whores, we want poems that kill. Assassin poems, poems that shoot guns, poems that wrestle cops into alleys and take their weapons, leaving them dead. With tongues pulled out and sent to Ireland. Knockoff poems for dope-selling wops or slick, half-white politicians. Airplane poems.
Yeah, no, go for it. Go for it. Ta-ta. Yeah. But I think that represents the gun, yeah.
Setting fire and death to Whitey's ass. Look at the liberal spokesman for the Jews clutch his throat and puke himself into eternity.
Skirt, kiki.
There's a Negro leader pinned to a bar stool and sardy eyeballs melting in the hot flame. Another Negro leader on the steps of the White House, kneeling between the sheriff's thighs, negotiating coolly for his people. This stumbles across the room. Put it on him, poem, strip him naked to the world. Another bad poem cracking steel knuckles. I and a Jew lady's mouth. Poem screams poison gas on beasts in green berets. Clean out the world for virtue and love. Let there be no love poems written until love can freely exist and cleanly. Let black people understand that they are the lovers and the sons of warriors, and sons of warriors are poems and poets and all the loveliness here in the world. We want a black poem and a black world. Let the world be a black poem, and let all black people speak this poem silently or loud.
Yeah.
Poem is always an interesting poem to read.
Nah, it truly is.
Okay, so starting at the top, I feel like, honestly, you were really good at breaking it up and like how the whole stanza thing. Do you have any thoughts on how he broke up this poem?
Yes. It's a free-flowing poem, and there's stanzas, but there's small little breaks that he puts a dash there, almost kind of like saying he's done, but he wants you to follow into the next one. And if you look on the second stanza, he has Jews, and then he has a period right there. Even the Jews, he doesn't even put a capital letter for them. That's how you can kind of see he's demeaning them. He's kind of like, they're not that important to even have a capital letter. And then the next letter is black poems. You know, how now the black now has the full, it has the capital letters. You know, he's kind of increasing us in a certain way.
But getting into this poem, I feel like he's basically saying that people prioritize either music or poems that aren't that deep, like with the phrase, poems are bullshit unless they are trees. Damn, I said that wrong. Poems are bullshit unless they are teeth or trees or lemons piled on a step, or black ladies dying of men leaving nickel hearts, beating them down. I feel like he's saying just like different forms of what poems are and just metaphors. And like no one really cares about black art poem or black pain poem. Maybe it's like people overlook it because they feel like it's too serious for them. But that's the kind of thing he wants. Like he wants people to just speak with such vulgar dictation, like convicting dictation too. That just like with the part he says, poems that kill, assassin poems, poems that shoot guns, poems that wrestle cops into alleys and take their weapons, leaving them dead with their tongues pulled off and sent to Ireland.
No, that is true. He's trying to what do you call it when somebody attacks your character to make you to get a rise out of you. He's
Trigger?
Like,
yeah, he's trying to trigger the black community in order for them to start taking things seriously. You know, trying to take their yeah, yes.
oh, I was gonna say for sure with I had no idea what mulatto meant until like a couple days ago, but realized it was like black and white ancestry, so like mixed people. Like he for sure says that to them, like black poems to smear on girdle mama, mulatto bitches, whose brains are red jelly stuck between Elizabeth Taylor's toes, stinking whores. Like
Yeah.
I feel like he's really calling out mixed people with that one. And does anyone know what girdle mama is?
No, I don't know. I think maybe it might be a food brand, but we don't
Yeah.
know. But it is true in those times, being mixed it kind of made you at a higher
More
class.
superior,
He
yeah.
was, and he was trying to tell them that, bro, you're still black.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're trying to do. And you could see that when he goes, if you go a little bit down, where he's just like, you have a Negro leader over there who's coolly talking to
Yeah.
who's
Like casually and nonchalant,
Yeah.
negotiating to a white man.
exactly for other people's freedom.
Yeah.
I think that one has two meanings there. I think there he's coming against Martin Luther King because he was the only one who passively negotiated for the liberation of black people. No, let's
I
not say
wouldn't say only,
liberation.
but
Yeah.
Yeah, let's not say liberation. He passively tried to get laws passed
Yeah.
to end Jim Crow.
Yeah.
You know, and he's coming against him over there because everyone, after the laws were kind of created and there was civil rights acts, everyone was celebrating, and then Malcolm X kind of steps in, right? And he's just like, thank you very much, Martin Luther King, but what you just did was a great milestone. They gave us laws, but yet they don't respect us. There's no way we can have laws but not have respect. And that's why we went into that same revolution. And I think there, it's him coming against him very, very hard. He's like, you know, Martin Luther King, you did well, but you didn't really do much for us. So this poem itself, I think it starts off with him in triggering a lot of black people to start taking things seriously. Then afterwards, he kind of goes against, like, he's trying to go for the light-skinned guys and how they're not taking things seriously. And then from the next stanza, which you can see, it ends on the and then starts with the D. You know, it doesn't say and, but like he's just saying and then D, and then he's continuing. So it's kind of
emphasis on it. Like,
Yeah.
this is what I have to say. Overall, though, I think he overall is just trying to tell us as a community that we do, like you said, need to start taking things seriously and take back our power. Because they're not going to give it to us. So we have to take it back. Especially when he talks about, in the line where he's setting fire and death to whitey's asses, and on the line where he talks about tackling cops. Poems that wrestle cops into alleys and take their weapons, leaving them dead with tongues put on, sent back to Ireland. Because everyone knows they've had the expressions like, oh, if you're so unhappy, just go back to where you're from. Go back here, go back there. But the problem is, this is, we're here. We're here.
Yeah.
So he's trying to say, he's basically telling them to go back. He's flipping the script on them in a sense and saying, hey, this is what you do to us, now we're doing it to you. You see how this feels. Go back.
Yes.
You're not from here.
Oh,
And
okay.
I feel like he's mainly just trying to get everyone to start writing poetry. Oh, sorry. I feel like he's mainly trying to get people to start writing poetry and speaking their truth and letting the truth be known. And where he says, clean out the world for virtue and love. Let no love poems be written until love can exist freely and cleanly. And starts basically hyping up black people that they're warriors and sons of warriors. And we are poets. And what did you guys interpret of Let the World Be a Black Poem?
I feel like he associates blackness with beauty. So he's kind of like, instead of certain things being one specific way, let there be, diversity into it. Like he's letting the other factors be let into it,
Okay, for sure. But then, I think especially with the last line, and let all black people speak this poem silently or loud. So even if you can't even, or have the strength or courage to like say it to others and like to the masses type of thing, like you can just start with yourself and it's also a way to just express your pain and like get that out there and kind of heal in a sense.
Yeah, and I think that's why you use the vulgar language in it. Out of all these other poems, there's no real vulgar language. And he kind of says it there to kind of trigger that type of anger, like,
Yeah.
man, you got to stop being
gotta do
comfortable.
something, yeah.
Yeah, it's like get your attention, put
Yeah.
emphasis on it.
Yeah, but thank you guys for conversating with me and telling me your kind of views with all of this. And I hope you guys have a great day.
You too.
Yes.
And join us next week for our next podcast.